Loneliness is the poverty of self. Solitude is the richness of self. Good late night to you, my friend. If you are here right now, in the quiet dark of this late hour, with the day finally behind you, and nothing left to do but rest, then I want you to know that you have found exactly the right place. Whatever brought you here tonight, whatever kept you awake when the rest of the world has gone to sleep, I am glad you're here. I'm your friend, Arthur. And tonight, we're going to talk about something that I think a great many people carry quietly, without ever saying it out loud, without even fully understanding it themselves. We are going to talk about the difference between being alone and being lonely. It is a bigger difference than most people realize. And I think by the end of tonight, you might feel that difference settle into you in a way that brings you some real and lasting peace. Before we go any further, I want to take just a small moment to speak with you directly. If these late night stories have ever given you comfort, if you have ever come here at the end of a hard day and felt something in your chest loosen just a little as my voice filled the room, then I want to gently ask you to consider subscribing to this channel. If you have not already done so, leave a like on tonight's broadcast if it speaks to you. And if you feel moved to, leave a comment down below, just a word or two about how you are feeling tonight. It means more to me than I can properly say. It tells me that this quiet work of building a safe place in the dark for tired people is actually reaching someone, actually helping someone, and that gives me the motivation to keep doing it, night after night. So if you can, please do that. And then let us begin. I received a letter recently from a man named Marcus, and I want to tell you, before I read it to you, that this letter sat with me for a long time after I first opened it. Not because it was dramatic, or because something terrible had happened to him. Nothing like that. It sat with me because it was quiet in a way that felt very true, and because I recognized in his words a feeling that I believe touches almost every single person at some point in their life, even people who seem, from the outside, to have everything: friends, family, a full calendar, a house full of noise. Marcus wrote about a kind of aloneness that has nothing to do with how many people are in the room. And I think many of you listening tonight already know exactly what I mean. So let me read you his letter now, exactly as he wrote it. This is Marcus. Arthur, I don't really know how to start this, so I'm just going to start typing and see what comes out. It's late. It's actually really late. Later than I usually stay up. But I've been sitting here for almost an hour, just staring at the wall, and I figured I might as well try to put some of this down, instead of just sitting with it in my head. I don't know exactly how to explain what I'm feeling. It's not sadness exactly. It's not like something bad happened. I have a job. I have people around me all day. I went to a dinner last week with a group of people I've known for years. Good people, people who like me, and I sat at the table, and I left at the right times, and I said the things you say, and the whole time, the entire time, I felt like I was watching it from somewhere outside myself. Like there was a version of me sitting at that table being normal and being fine, and then there was the real me, somewhere off to the side, just watching and feeling completely and totally alone. That's the thing I don't know how to explain to people. That you can be sitting in a room full of people who care about you, actual people, actual real conversations happening, and still feel like nobody in that room actually sees you. not the real you, just the version of you that shows up and says the right things and asks how everyone's doing and remembers their kids' names. That guy is fine. Everyone likes that guy, but I don't know if anyone has met the guy underneath him in a long time. Sometimes I'm not sure I've met him either. I keep thinking there's something wrong with me because of this. Like other people don't feel this way. Like everyone else is actually connected to the people around them. And I'm the only one faking it. I don't know if that's true. I hope it's not true. But at 2 in the morning, it's very hard not to believe it. I guess what I'm asking, if I'm asking anything, is whether this feeling ever goes away. Whether there's a way to be around people and not feel so far away from everyone at the same time. Or whether I'm just going to keep doing this, showing up, saying the right things, and going home to sit alone with the real feeling, whatever that even is anymore. Thanks for listening, I guess. I don't really have anyone else I say this kind of thing to. Marcus, I read your letter twice before I let myself respond to it, because I wanted to make sure I gave you the answer that this feeling actually deserves, not just a quick comfort that fades the moment the words are done. What you described, that feeling of sitting in a full room and still feeling entirely alone, is one of the most common and least talked about experiences a person can have. And I want you to know something clearly before we go any further tonight. There is nothing wrong with you. Not one thing. What you are describing is not a flaw in your character or a failure to connect. It is something almost every honest person feels at some point, and most of them never say it out loud, which is exactly why it feels so isolating when you do. I want to answer you tonight with a story rather than a list of advice, because I think this particular feeling responds better to a quiet picture than to a set of instructions. So I want to take you somewhere tonight, Marcus and everyone else listening in the dark with us. I want to take you down to a small harbor late into the night, long after the last regular passengers have gone home, to meet a man who understands something about solitude that took him many years on the water to learn. His name is Thomas, and tonight, he is making the very last crossing before the ferry finishes for the night. The harbor is quiet at this hour, quieter than it is at almost any other point in the day. During the daylight hours, this small stretch of water and dock and pier is full of noise and motion. The calling of gulls, the shouting of children waiting for their turn to board, the low mechanical hum of the ferry engines starting and stopping, the footsteps of dozens of passengers moving across the wooden planks of the dock in their hurried, purposeful way. But now, late into the night, all of that is gone still. The last regular passengers left hours ago. The ticket booth at the edge of the dock is closed and dark, its little window shuttered. The gulls have settled somewhere out of sight, tucked into whatever quiet corners gulls find for themselves when the harbor goes to sleep. There is only the water now, and the dark, and the soft, scattered lights of the town on the far shore, and Thomas, standing alone at the wheel of his ferry, preparing for one final crossing before he can call this day finished. Thomas has been running this ferry for many years, long enough that the whole shape of the crossing, every bend of the channel, every subtle change in the current near the far pier, every small detail of how the boat responds to the wind on a night like this one, lives in his hands and his body without him needing to think about it at all. He knows this water the way you know the inside of your own house in the dark, The way your feet find the stairs without needing your eyes to check each one. He has made this same crossing thousands and thousands of times. Morning crossings full of commuters reading their papers. Afternoon crossings full of families and children pointing at the water. Evening crossings full of tired workers heading home with their eyes half closed. And now, tonight, this last crossing, the quiet one, the one with no passengers at all. He likes this crossing best. He has never said that to anyone, not because it is a secret exactly, but because there has never really been anyone to say it to at this hour. And even if there were, he is not sure he could explain why in a way that would make sense to someone who has not felt it themselves. It is not that he dislikes the busy crossings, the mornings full of familiar faces, the small nods and greetings he exchanges with the regular commuters who have ridden his ferry so many times over the years that they feel almost like old friends. He likes those crossings too, in their own way. But there is something about this last one, this quiet, empty, late one, that feels different to him. Something that feels, if he is honest with himself, like coming home. He steps out onto the deck for a moment before starting the engine, just to feel the night air on his face. It is cool and slightly damp, carrying the particular smell that only comes from a harbor at night. Salt and diesel and something green and living underneath it all. The smell of water that has been moving and working all day and is now, like everything else here, settling into its nighttime rhythm. He looks out across the dark water toward the far shore. The lights of the town are scattered and small at this distance, warm points of yellow and amber against the deep blue-black of the night. A scattering of windows still lit in houses where someone is awake, perhaps reading, perhaps unable to sleep, perhaps simply sitting in the quiet the way Thomas is about to sit in his own. He breathes it in, that night air, slowly and fully, the way a person breathes when there is no reason to rush the breath, no meeting to get to, no one waiting on him to hurry along. He holds it for a moment, and then he lets it out, slow and easy, and he turns and walks back toward the wheelhouse, his footsteps soft and unhurried on the deck boards, each one falling exactly where his feet already know to place it after all these years. The wheelhouse is small, just large enough for the wheel, and the instrument panel, and the low stool that Thomas sometimes sits on during the quieter parts of a crossing, though tonight he expects he will stand for most of it, the way he usually does on this last run, because standing lets him feel the whole boat under his feet, the whole rhythm of the water moving beneath the hull. And there is something he likes about that too, something grounding in the small vibration that travels up through the deck and into his legs and into the rest of his body, connecting him to the water, the way a hand resting on a sleeping animal's side connects you to its slow, steady breathing. He reaches for the panel and switches on the running lights, the small colored lamps at the bow and stern that mark the boat's position on the water for any other vessel that might be out at this hour, though there rarely are any this late. Green on the right side, red on the left, a small white light at the very top of the mast. He checks each one out of habit, the same habit he has followed every single night for years, glancing out at the deck to confirm the green light is glowing steady, then to the other side to confirm the red, then up to the mast to confirm the white, all three burning clean and steady in the dark, everything as it should be. He turns the key, and the engine comes to life beneath him. A low, warm, familiar rumble that rises up through the deck and settles into a steady, even idle, the sound that Thomas has heard so many thousands of times that it no longer registers to him as noise at all. It is more like a heartbeat, more like the sound of the boat itself breathing, settling into readiness the same way Thomas settles into readiness. The two of them, men and vessel, beginning this last quiet crossing together, the way they've begun so many crossings before. He checks his gauges, one by one, the way he always does, his eyes moving across the small dials with the practiced, unhurried attention of someone who does not need to search for the information, because he already knows, from decades of experience, exactly what each gauge should read at this point in the evening. Fuel level steady and sufficient. Engine temperature within its normal range. Oil pressure exactly where it should be. Everything is in order. Everything is ready. He reaches for the throttle and eases it forward just slightly, and the boat begins to move away from the dock, slow and smooth, the water parting gently at the bow and folding back along the sides of the hull in two long, quiet ribbons of dark water, touched here and there with the faint reflected shimmer of the harbor lights. I want to pause here for a moment, Marcus, and speak to you directly, because I think there is something important happening in this quiet wheelhouse that I want you to notice clearly before we continue. Thomas is completely alone right now. There is no one else on this boat. No passengers. No crewmate. No one to talk to. No one to check the gauges with him. No one to share the sight of the harbor lights receding behind him as the boat pulls away from the dock. If you were to describe his circumstances on paper, alone at night, on an empty boat, in the middle of dark water, it might sound like the description of loneliness. It might sound like exactly the kind of isolation you were writing to me about in your letter, that feeling of being far away from everyone even when they are close by. But Thomas is not lonely, not even slightly, and I want you to sit with that difference for a moment, because I think it holds something important for you. Loneliness is not about how many people are in the room. It is not a measurement of how crowded a table is or how full a calendar looks. Loneliness is the feeling of being disconnected from yourself, of wearing a version of yourself that other people can see and approve of, while the real, quiet, true self sits somewhere off to the side, unseen and unheard. Exactly the way you described feeling at that dinner last week. That is what makes a crowded room feel lonely. Not the number of people in it, but the distance between the self you are showing them and the self you actually are underneath. Solitude is a completely different thing. Solitude is what Thomas has right now, alone on this dark water, and it does not carry that same painful distance inside it, because there is no gap to close. There is no performance happening. There is no version of himself he needs to present for anyone's benefit, no expression to maintain, no small talk to manage, no sense of being watched or measured or needing to seem a certain way. He is simply here, exactly as he is, and there's no one asking him to be anything else. And in that simple absence of performance, something settles in him, something opens. He is, in this moment, more fully himself than he often gets to be during the busier hours of his day, and that fullness, that complete and unguarded presence with his own company, is the opposite of lonely. It is peaceful. It is, in its own quiet way, a kind of relief. I want you to consider something, Marcus. The ache you feel at that dinner table, the feeling of being far away from the people around you, even while you are laughing with them, that ache is not caused by being with people. It is caused by not being fully yourself while you are with them. And that is a very different problem than the one you might think you have. It is not that you need more people in your life, or louder gatherings, or more frequent company. It might be that you need more moments like the one Thomas is having right now. Quiet moments, alone with your own thoughts, where nothing is required of you, where no performance is needed, where you can simply exist exactly as you are without anyone there to please or manage or perform for. Sometimes it is only in solitude, real solitude, chosen and unhurried, that a person finally gets to meet themselves again. And sometimes meeting yourself in the quiet is exactly what makes it possible to be truly present with others later, instead of just performing presence while feeling far away. Let us go back to Thomas now. Let us watch him a while longer on this quiet water and see what his solitude actually looks like, moment by moment. And maybe in watching him, something in you will recognize a permission you have been needing. The boat moves steadily across the dark water, the engine holding its low, and even rumble beneath the deck, the bow lights glowing green and red against the black. Thomas stands at the wheel with one hand resting lightly on it, more out of habit than necessity, since the course across this stretch of water is one his hands could probably hold even in his sleep. He is not gripping it tightly. His whole posture is loose, relaxed, the posture of a man who is not fighting the water or rushing to be somewhere, but simply moving through it at the pace the crossing calls for, no faster and no slower. He looks out through the wide front window of the wheelhouse at the water ahead. It is dark, but not featureless. There is enough light from the moon tonight, a thin crescent hanging somewhere above the far shore, to catch the small movements of the surface and turn them into faint, silvery patterns that shift and reform with each passing moment. The water is calm tonight, gentle swells rather than waves, the kind of calm that makes the whole crossing feel unhurried and safe. The boat rising and falling so slightly with each swell that Thomas barely registers the motion anymore, his body having long ago learned to move with it instead of against it, adjusting his balance without thought. The same small correction his legs have made 10,000 times before. He listens to the engine. This is one of his favorite parts of the crossing, though again, he has never described it to anyone in quite these words. The engine has a particular rhythm to it, a low and steady pulse that repeats itself over and over without variation. The same exact sound every single second, on and on, patient and unbothered, and utterly reliable. There is something in that steadiness that Thomas finds enormously calming. It does not rush, it does not skip, it does not hesitate or falter or ask anything of him beyond the occasional glance at the gauges to confirm that all is well. It simply runs, faithfully, exactly the same for as long as the crossing requires. And there is a kind of quiet trust that grows in a person who has spent years listening to a sound like that. A trust that things can simply continue, steadily and reliably, without drama, for a very long time. The water sounds are gentle too, folding in underneath the engine's hum a soft, continuous sound of the hull moving through the swells, a kind of whisper that rises and falls with each small rise and fall of the boat. If you listened closely, and Thomas often does, you could hear the individual textures within that whisper, the slightly sharper sound of water breaking against the bow, the softer, longer sound of it sliding along the sides of the hull, the faint slap of a larger swell against the stern every so often. All of it together makes a kind of music, unplanned and unrehearsed, the natural music that water makes when it is disturbed gently and allowed to settle again, over and over, the whole length of the crossing. Thomas checks his heading against a small compass mounted near the wheel, though he barely needs to. He has made this exact crossing so many times that his body has memorized the correct angle relative to the far shore lights. He could probably close his eyes for a full minute at this point in the journey and open them again to find the boat exactly where it should be. But he checks anyway, because it is part of the routine, and there is something comforting in the routine itself, something separate from its actual necessity. The compass needle sits steady where he expects it to sit. Everything is as it should be. He glances back over his shoulder at the harbor behind him. The dock is smaller now, its outline softened by distance, the few lights along it glowing small and warm against the dark shape of the shore. He can just make out the shuttered ticket booth, dark and still, and the outline of the bench where passengers wait during the day empty now, just a shape in the dark. He looks at it for a moment, this place that has been the center of his working life for so many years, and something in his chest settles a little further, the particular fondness that comes from looking at a familiar place from a small distance, seeing it whole and quiet at rest. He turns back to face forward. The far shore is closer now, its lights slightly larger and more distinct than they were a few minutes ago. Though the crossing is far from finished, there is still a good stretch of dark water ahead of him. Still time yet before the boat needs to be handled and slowed and guided toward the far dock. Thomas is not in any hurry to reach that moment. He is content exactly where he is, in the middle of the water, in the middle of the night, in the middle of this quiet and unhurried and entirely his own stretch of time. I want to tell you something about Thomas's history, Marcus, because I think it will help you understand why this particular part of his day, this quiet solitary crossing, means as much to him as it does. Thomas was not always a man who was comfortable with quiet. There was a time, many years ago now, when the silence of an empty boat would have felt unbearable to him, when he would have reached for a radio or found some reason to fill the space with noise, because the quiet back then felt like exactly what you described in your letter, Marcus. It felt like being alone in the worst sense of the word. It felt like proof that no one wanted to be near him, that the emptiness of the boat was a kind of judgment on him rather than simply the natural condition of a late-night crossing with no passengers scheduled. He spent years like that working this same ferry, running this same route, but never actually inhabiting the quiet moments the way he does now. He would find small ways to avoid them. He would talk to himself, or hum, or think anxiously about the conversations he'd had that day, replaying them, wondering if he had said the right things, wondering what people really thought of him underneath their polite words. He carried, in those years, exactly the kind of ache you describe, Marcus. the sense of being somewhere between people rather than truly with them, showing up and doing his job and being liked well enough by the regulars, but never quite believing that any of it was real, never quite trusting that the friendliness he received was actually meant for him rather than for the useful, agreeable version of himself that he presented each day. What changed for him did not happen all at once. It happened slowly, the way most real changes happen, built up over many quiet crossings just like this one, over many nights spent alone on this water, with nothing to distract him from his own company. At some point, he could not tell you exactly when, he stopped trying to escape the quiet and started, instead, simply sitting inside it. He stopped reaching for the radio. He stopped filling the silence with noise. He let himself be alone with his own thoughts, fully and completely, without treating the aloneness as a problem to be solved. And what he discovered, slowly, over time, was that his own company was not the terrible thing he had always assumed it to be. It was, in fact, rather good. He discovered that he had opinions and thoughts and a particular way of seeing the world that he actually liked once he gave himself the space to notice them without anyone else's reaction shaping how he felt about them. He discovered that the water at night was beautiful, genuinely beautiful, in a way he had never let himself notice before because he had always been too busy trying to fill the silence to actually look at what was around him. He discovered that the engine's steady hum was calming rather than empty. He discovered that being alone and being lonely, which he had always assumed were the same thing, were in fact two entirely different experiences, and that the second one only ever showed up when he was resisting the first one, fighting against the quiet, instead of allowing it to simply be what it was. Now, all these years later, this last crossing of the night is the part of his day he treasures most, not because he does not value the people he sees during his busier hours, the regular commuters he has come to know over the years, the small friendly exchanges that happen throughout a working day. He values those too genuinely. But this quiet crossing, this time alone with the water and the engine and his own settled thoughts, has become something he needs, something that lets him return to himself fully before he goes home for the night. It is not an absence of connection. It is a different kind of connection entirely, a connection to himself. And he's come to understand that the second kind makes the first kind possible. He can be present with the commuters during the busy hours precisely because he has this quiet hour to come back to himself first. The solitude feeds the connection rather than competing with it. I want you to consider, Marcus, whether something similar might be true for you. Not that you need to become a ferry operator or spend your nights alone on dark water, though if that appeals to you, I certainly will not discourage it. But whether there might be a version of quiet solitude chosen deliberately and without guilt that could help you the way it helped Thomas. A walk alone in the evening with no destination and no phone to check, an hour with a book and nothing else demanding your attention. A quiet cup of tea at a window, watching the street, thinking your own thoughts without needing to share them or perform them for anyone. These small chosen solitudes are not the same as the ache you described at that dinner table. They are the opposite of it. They are the practice ground where you get to meet yourself again, without an audience, without a performance, without anyone needing you to be anything other than exactly what you are. And here is the thing I most want you to hear tonight, Marcus. The distance you feel from other people is very often, underneath it all, a distance from yourself. When you spend enough quiet, unguarded time getting to know your own thoughts again, your own likes and dislikes, your own particular way of seeing the world, something in you becomes steadier. And a steadier self is a self that does not need to perform quite so hard when it walks into a room full of people. A steadier self can sit at a dinner table and let a few real, honest words slip out between the polite ones. And often, more often than you might expect, the people around that table have been waiting for exactly that, waiting for someone to be real first, so that they can feel safe enough to be real too. You are not broken, Marcus. You are simply a person who has been performing for a long time without enough quiet space to remember who is underneath the performance. That is a very fixable thing. It does not require anyone else's permission or participation. It only requires you, some quiet hours, and the willingness to sit with your own company the way Thomas sits with his, without treating the silence as an enemy. Let us return to the water now. Let us watch the rest of this crossing together, slowly, and let the rhythm of it carry both of us towards something calmer. The far shore continues to grow closer, its lights resolving now into individual, distinguishable points. A lamppost here, a lit window there, the dark shape of the small ferry building waiting at the end of its own quiet dock. Thomas eases the throttle back slightly as he begins the long, familiar approach. The engine's rumble softens just a touch, the bow settling a little lower in the water as the boat's speed decreases. This part of the crossing he handles with even more ease than the rest, if that is possible, his hands smoothing the wheel in small, unhurried adjustments as the current near this shore shifts and pulls gently at the hull. Corrections so practiced and so minor that from the outside you would hardly notice he was making them at all. He watches the dock lights grow steadily larger and more distinct. There is a particular kind of satisfaction in this part of every crossing, the sense of arrival approaching, not urgently, not with any pressure behind it, just the natural and inevitable conclusion of a journey that has unfolded exactly as it was meant to unfold, at exactly the pace it needed to unfold at. He is not eager to arrive, not exactly, since he has told you, in his own quiet way, that this crossing is one of his favorite parts of the whole day. But there is a gentle satisfaction in feeling a thing complete itself and watching a familiar shape become clear and then clearer, and then fully present in front of him. The water grows slightly calmer as he moves into the more sheltered water near the dock. The wind cut somewhat by the buildings along the shore, the small swells softening into something closer to stillness. The engine continues its low, steady rumble, unbothered by the change, running exactly as it has run for the whole crossing, exactly as it will run for the final few minutes, before Thomas cuts the throttle entirely. He watches the dock approach, his eyes moving between the wheel and the water and the mooring posts that mark where the boat needs to come to rest. All of it familiar, all of it comfortable, all of it happening with the particular ease of something done correctly many thousands of times before. He brings the boat in alongside the dock with barely a bump, the hull kissing gently against the old rubber fenders mounted along the dock's edge. A soft, muted sound, more felt than heard. He reaches for the throttle and eases it back further still. then further, until the engine settles into its lowest idle, barely more than a whisper now beneath the deck, the boat drifting the last few inches into position entirely on its own momentum. He steps out onto the deck, moving with the same unhurried ease he has carried through the whole crossing, and he loops the mooring line around the nearest post with a motion so practiced it requires no thought at all, his hands simply knowing what to do, the rope settling into place exactly where it belongs. He stands there for a moment on the deck, the boat now still and secured, the dock quiet and empty in front of him, the town beyond it dark except for its scattered lights, most of its people long asleep. He looks back across the water at the harbor he left behind, now a small cluster of distant lights on the far side of the black water, the whole crossing lying behind him like something completed and whole, a chapter finished exactly as it was meant to be finished. He reaches down and switches off the running lights, one at a time, the way he checked them at the start of the crossing, green first, then red, then the small white light at the top of the mast. The boat sits dark now, except for the single lamp inside the wheelhouse, its warm glow the only light left on the whole vessel, throwing a small, soft circle onto the deck boards around it. He steps back inside, out of the cool night air, and he reaches for the ignition and turns the key, and the engine's steady rumble, the sound that has been with him for the whole crossing, quiets into nothing. The silence that follows is complete and immediate, the particular kind of silence that only comes after a sound has been running so long and so steadily that its absence feels like its own presence, a stillness with shape and weight to it. Thomas sits down on the low stool inside the wheelhouse. He does not move to leave the boat yet. There is no reason to hurry. The dock is quiet, the town is asleep, and there is nothing waiting for him on the other side of this moment that requires him to rush toward it. He simply sits in the small warm circle of the single remaining lamp and listens to the new quiet that has settled over the boat now that the engine has gone still. The water outside continues its own soft sound, small waves slapping gently against the hull and the pilings of the dock, a sound so much quieter than the engine had been that it takes a moment for Thomas's ears to adjust and begin to hear it properly. It is a lovely sound, this water sound, patient and endless. The same sound this harbor has made every single night for longer than Thomas has been alive, and it will go on making it long after he's gone too. There is something comforting in that thought, though he could not fully explain why. Something about being a small, temporary part of something so much larger and older and more enduring than himself, something that does not need him in order to continue, and yet welcomes him gently into its rhythm for as long as he chooses to sit inside it. He looks out through the wheelhouse window at the dark water, calm now, barely moving, holding the faint scattered reflections of the dock lights and the thin crescent moon still hanging somewhere above the rooftops. He is completely alone. There is no one else awake on this dock, no one else on this water, no one at all who knows or cares exactly what Thomas is doing at this exact moment, sitting quietly in a small wheelhouse at the end of a long day. And he does not feel lonely, not even slightly. He feels, in fact, remarkably at peace, more at peace than he has felt at almost any other point in his day, sitting here in his own company with nothing required of him, and nothing expected of him, and no one watching to see whether he's being the right version of himself. He breathes slowly in through his nose, the cool night air mixing with the warmer air inside the small wheelhouse. He holds it for a moment, and then he lets it out, slow and complete, his shoulders dropping slightly as he does, the last of the crossing's quiet concentration finally releasing from his body now that the boat is secured and still. He is done for the night. There is nowhere else he needs to be, and nothing else he needs to do. He can simply sit here in the warm lamplight, listening to the water for as long as he wants to before he finally rises and makes his way home. I want to bring you back now, Marcus, and everyone listening with us tonight, gently, the way the boat has settled gently against the dock. I want you to carry something with you from this quiet crossing, something that I hope will sit with you differently than any advice I could have given you directly. Being alone is not a punishment. It is not evidence that something is wrong with you, or that you are unlikable, or that you have failed to build the kind of life other people seem to have built. Being alone, when you allow yourself to actually be present inside instead of fighting against it, can be one of the most restorative and honest experiences available to a person. It can be the place where you finally stop performing and simply exist, exactly as you are, without needing anyone's approval or reaction to tell you whether that self is acceptable. The ache you feel in crowded rooms, Marcus, the distance between the self you show and the self underneath, that ache is not solved by adding more people to your life or forcing more connection. It is often, quietly and gradually, softened by spending real, unhurried time with your own company first, because it is only in that quiet time, that chosen solitude, that you get to remember who you actually are underneath all the performing. And once you remember that, once you have spent enough evenings, like Thomas has spent his crossings, sitting easily with your own thoughts, something shifts. You stop needing the crowd's approval quite so much, because you have already found something steadier and more reliable, which is your own approval of yourself. You are not the only one who feels this way. I want to say that as clearly and as warmly as I can. Nearly everyone who has ever sat at a table full of people and felt far away has felt exactly what you described. It is one of the most common human experiences there is, and it is one of the least discussed, because it feels embarrassing to admit. It feels like it should not be true if you are surrounded by people who supposedly care about you. But it is true for so many people, and the solution is rarely more people. The solution is more yourself, more quiet hours, more permission to simply be without an audience, without a performance, without needing anyone else in the room to tell you that you are all right. You are all right, Marcus. Whatever version of you shows up at that dinner table, and whatever quieter, truer version sits underneath it watching, they are both you, and neither of them is broken. They simply need some time together, some quiet, unhurried time, the way Thomas gives himself on this last crossing every single night. Give yourself that time, not as a punishment or an isolation, but as a gift, a chosen solitude deliberately claimed, where nothing is required of you except your own honest company. I want you to settle now, wherever you are listening to this, into your own version of Thomas's quiet wheelhouse. Let your body sink into whatever is holding you, your bed, your chair, the soft weight of your blanket surround you. Let your shoulders drop the way his dropped when the engine went quiet and the boat came finally to rest against the dock. There is nowhere you need to be right now. There is nothing required of you. You do not need to perform for anyone in this room because there is no one else in this room. And even if there were, they would not need anything from you either. Not right now, not at this late, peaceful hour. Listen, if you can, for the quiet water sound that Thomas hears from his wheelhouse. That soft, endless lapping against the hull and the dock pilings, patient and unhurried. The same sound the water has made every night for longer than anyone can remember. Let that sound live somewhere in the back of your mind as you breathe in, slowly, the cool night air filling your chest. Hold it just for a moment in the stillness at the top of the breath and out. Slowly, completely, your whole body settling a little further down into rest as the breath leaves you. You are not lonely tonight. You are simply alone in the good and peaceful sense of that word, the sense that Thomas discovered slowly over many years of quiet crossings, the sense that does not need to be filled with noise or distraction or performance. You are here in your own company, and your own company is enough. It has always been enough. It only needed the quiet to prove it to you. The dock is still. The water is calm. The lamp in the wheelhouse burns low and warm. And somewhere out on that dark, gentle water, a boat sits secured. It rests, its engine quiet, its work for the day complete. Let your own body follow that same example. Let the work of your day be finished now. Let your engine go quiet. Let yourself rest, secured and safe in the warm lamp light of this late and peaceful hour. Your breathing is slower now. Your body is heavier, sinking further into the surface beneath you with each passing breath. There is nothing left to do tonight. There's nowhere left to go. There's only this quiet, this stillness, this gentle water sound carrying you further and further from the noise of the day and closer to the deep, restful sleep that is waiting for you, patient and unhurried, the way the far shore waited for Thomas at the end of his crossing. Sleep now. Let the quiet hold you the way the calm water holds a boat that rests against its dock. You are not alone in any way that needs fixing tonight. You are simply, peacefully, wonderfully yourself, resting in your own good company, safe and warm and completely at ease. I will be here again tomorrow night. The lamp will be lit. The water will be calm. Come back whenever you need this quiet, and I will be waiting for you. I'm your friend, Arthur. You are safe. Good night.